Ticking Clocks, a short story by Faith Carey. The soft sound of ticking clocks filled the small apartment. They hung from every wall, the old man's work left prominently on display. The old man sat at his desk, a small corner set aside for his work, tinkering with another of his creations, his pride, his children. From the other side of the apartment came a knock. The old man stirred, a chill running down his spine. With uncharacteristically shaky hands, he set his tools down and pushed himself to his feet, turning now to look through the opening from the living room to the kitchen to stare at the door. Another knock, same as the first. The old man took a breath, nodded to himself, and uneasily made his way to the door. He placed one hand on the knob and the other on the deadbolt. Closing his eyes, he steeled himself, easing the uneven flutter of his wary heart. His eyes opened, hands tensed, and with his newfound fleeting determination, unlocked the deadbolt and turned the knob in a single motion. The old man answered the door, swinging it open to reveal a tall man, clad in a well-fitted black suit, hat in hand. His pale face was somber, peaceful. "May I come in?" the well-dressed man asked, his piercing gray eyes seemingly staring through the old man. The old man swallowed. His mouth was dry, throat tight. "Yes," came the old man's hoarse whisper, stepping aside and ushering the tall man in with a nod. The old man closed the door behind him, taking a moment to turn the deadbolt. The old man shuffled past the tall man, taking the lead and guiding him to the living room. The old man stepped beside a small table. Two chairs sat at either end, and a glass chess set already set atop it. The well-dressed man raised an eyebrow. "It's supposed to be a game of chance," the tall man said, taking the black king in his hand and turning it, inspecting the craftsmanship. The old man looked to the tall man, his eyes pleading, desperate. He opened his mouth to speak, but the tall man raised a hand, stifling him. He sighed, gingerly putting the piece back in its place. The tall man took off his jacket and draped it across the back of his chair before taking his seat at the table. The old man, smiling half-heartedly, quickly followed suit. The old man made his first move, hands still shaking, picking a piece up and setting it back down with the soft click of glass on glass. The suited man quickly did the same, taking little time to think. The two continued this way for a time, the apartment now filled with the ticking of clocks and the soft sound of clicking glass. The tall man glanced around the small room, admiring the many clocks that adorned the walls. "No pictures? Do you have no family?" he asked, taking his bishop and moving it across the board to take the old man's rook. The old man sighed and shook his head. A mournful smile crossed his face. "There was never—" He looked at the clocks, and a bitter laugh escaped his lips. "There was never time." A gentle smile overtook the tall man's face, followed shortly by an empathetic chuckle. The old man in turn laughed again, as did the suited man. Clocks, glass, laughter. They chuckled amongst themselves as their game continued. As their laughter subsided, the tall man looked up from the board to the old man. Tilting his head, he asked, "If you are alone, why do you choose to stay?" The old man met his piercing gaze for a moment, then quickly looked away and shrugged. "Nobody likes change." The tall man considered his words for a moment, then nodded. "I suppose that does make sense." Few pieces remained on the board now. Each man took their time to contemplate their moves, planning carefully. This time the old man looked at the suited man. Taking a deep breath, he asked, "What's it like?" The tall man met his gaze, tilting his head slightly, thinking before he answered. "Bright." A brief moment later, he tilted his head the other way, adding, "Warm." The old man looked back down to the table, lost in thought. He was roused from his stupor by the other man reaching out to topple his king, laying it on its side. The old man blinked. In his trance, he hadn't noticed he had already won. A few pieces remained, but it was clear the old man was only a few moves from victory. The tall man stood. "Well played," he said, as he put his jacket on, carefully buttoning it back up. The old man stood as well, and walked the tall man to the door, unlocking the deadbolt and swinging it open. The tall man stood in the doorway, straightening his suit before looking to the old man. "How long?" the tall man asked. The old man paused for a moment, eyes fixed on the floor, the ticking clocks once again the only sound. The old man looked up, meeting the suited man's gray eyes. "One day." The tall man tilted his head, eyebrows furrowed in confusion. He opened his mouth to say something but closed it again. His eyes caught by the pictureless walls of the small apartment. He nodded. "See you tomorrow, then," he said, turning away from the old man and disappearing down the hallway.